In this lesson, we'll add the side-to-side motion of the front legs to complete the animation of our limbs. There's not going to be too much side-to-side movement in our thoracic limbs, and there's going to be even less noticeable movement in our pelvic limbs, so we won't need to worry about animating the side-to-side to them, just focusing on these front ones. So, since the left one is out forward, okay, I think it wants to be worked on first, so let's go ahead and select that. We'll go back to our graph editor. Okay, Window Animation Editors, Graph Editor, there we are. And we'll begin working on it. So we'll go to the Translate X, frame up our curve, and what's going to happen is as it plants, it's going to come in to where it's more centered into the body. Okay, and then as it bends, to about the pose on frame 6 where it's bent the most, okay, or just about at this position, we're going to want it to preserve the pose as it's in right now. Okay, so it's about to, that's going to be its range, we can say. So knowing that, we'll go to frame 6 and just set that key of 0 on our Translate X. Okay, and then when the foot plants, that's going to be on frame 1 and also 13. We don't want to forget that. Let's go to our front view. And from here, let's even raise up our graph editor a bit. We're going to want to bring in the leg to about, I'd say to about this position here. Okay, so it's a little bit more centered into the body. Okay, and if you notice, it is coming off the ground, so we're going to need to adjust our center of gravity, bringing it down a little bit more so that we can get our legs planting. But we'll worry about that later. What I usually like to do is little tweaks like this to save to the end of the animation to basically add some final touch-ups before we can call it finished. So we'll work on that at around that time. So once the leg's brought in, we know that we have a value of about -3. Let's go ahead and we can round that off just to make the number a little bit easier to use. And then with that value, we could just select that key on frame 13 now and apply that same value of -3 so that the value on frame 3 will be brought down to the right position. Now, if you notice, okay, we're getting the right movement in our X, but the knee is kind of flipping out. And that's because of how close our pole vector or elbow controls still are. So let's go ahead and select them. We'll go into a side view. And let's middle click on frame 1 and just move them up forward a little bit more to about that position there. And then once we have the value, okay, for our Z, we could go to our Z, just control clicking the channels, hit F. Since we have this value, we could just select it, copy it from our value text field, and paste it right there on frame 13. Paste. Hit enter, and we're good to go. So now let's see if that does it for us. We'll go back to our front view. Okay, now the knee is better. Excellent. So there's the movement of our left limb. That's looking really nice. Okay, so let's go ahead and apply the same thing to our right now. So we go to our perspective, see where the leg is bent about the most. That's going to be about right there on, let's say about frame 3. So go to frame 3, bring back our graph editor, okay, going now to the Translate X, and we could set a key there because we know that's about its range where it's going to be bent out the most. And now as far as its in position, and this is also where it's going to be planted for a few frames, to about frame 12. What we could do here is go to where it's planted on frame 10, go to our front view, pretty much bring it in to where the leg would be planted, so about right there. And once we have that key, we could hit F to get a better detailed view in here. And now as the foot's going to be planted all the way to frame 12, we're not going to want any movement, we're not going to want any sliding in the X, right? So what we'll do once we have the pose on frame 10 we'll middle mouse button click on frame 12 and set a key of the Translate X so that it will be planted as it should be in the X from frames 10 to 12. Great. Now we don't want it planted as it's in the air from frames 1 to 3, even from frames 13, 1, and 3. So what we can do here is just take the keys on frames 1 and 13 and hold the shift button and bring up our keys a bit like so, and then we'll select the right halves and middle mouse button click and drag down. Okay, so now the leg won't be planted in the air, Okay, or we won't have a plant of our translate X in the air, which shouldn't happen. And now that we've corrected the pose, what we can do is minimize our graph editor. Okay, even hide our grid in here. In the front view, hide our curves, and work on doing a play blast to see if we like the movement we're getting, to see if we need to make any tweaks to it. Here it is. Awesome, so our gallop is really coming along. It's looking nice in the front view. Great, so now that we've done this, our next task is going to be to add some detail to the upper body to get that moving because it's way too stiff right now. But we've got our limbs pretty much wrapped up, and again, if we need to make any tweaks, we can make them right at the end where we add our final touch-ups, the icing on the cake we can see to complete this project. So in the next lesson, we'll begin working on our hips area of our gallop.